Yes, leave it on and speak through that. That'll be great. Thank you.
Brilliant. Okay, let me just, can you hear me now? Yeah?
Yes, we can hear you.
Brilliant. Right. Let me just, I'm actually hearing double.
It doesn't matter. We can hear you singly. It's fine.
Okay. Right. If I can share the slides.
Yes, go ahead.
I'm just going to try to share those slides. It's not having much success.
Well, why don't you speak without the slides? It's fine. Just
Of
talk to
course.
us without the slides. Otherwise, we will be wasting the meeting.
Oh, that's okay. Ready in time for the evening meal. Right. Okay. Thank you very much. Sorry about the mishap with the actual technical side of things. Right. We've got about 10 minutes from what I understand for the presentation and then questions. Yeah. Right. In order to understand and to improve diabetic control, we need to understand how poor control develops and how it progresses. And without that knowledge, it's always difficult to address the problem about controlling. Now, diabetes has always been emphasized as high sugar, but it's not just high sugar. That's the problem. It is insulin resistance. The real thing that controls the blood sugar is called insulin. That's what I call the thermostat of the body for controlling sugar. And the effect of that deteriorates. So you need more and more and more insulin to have the same effect on the blood sugar. And as a result, there's high levels of insulin as well. And eventually, when things get really, really bad, the pancreas in the body is unable to produce adequate amounts of insulin. So the whole thing just continually gets worse and worse with time. And that's why diabetes was originally thought to be a chronic progressive disease which you couldn't cure. And unfortunately, the majority of the people and the profession still believe that's the case. However, we can manage type 2 diabetes relatively easily, but with real motivation and changes to your lifestyle. Insulin is produced by the body mainly in response to what we call carbohydrates, which is the sugars and the starches that produce foods. But insulin resistance starts developing when bodies are exposed to higher amounts of carbohydrates over years. And insulin resistance develops over about 10 years. Eventually, the body can't cope with that sugar load. Insulin levels go very high, and eventually the sugar level starts going up. Every time you eat food, insulin shoots up and then eventually comes down. But if you start having high sugary foods and snacks in between, which is so common, eventually the insulin levels keep on staying up. And the pancreas produces more and more insulin. It never comes down. And that just is a vicious circle. It makes the diabetes worse and worse. The only way of really addressing that is by giving the body a break, a chance to recover. Let the insulin levels start coming down in between the food. And the only way that's going to happen is if you don't have food that shoots up the sugar, which is the carbohydrates. And you also give a chance for the body to let the sugar come down a little bit more naturally and let the insulin start coming down by giving it a break from food for a lot longer period. And that leads on to something what everybody knows about now, they call intermittent fasting or time restricted fasting. And the duration of that, the longer, the better, because it gives the body chance to recover. Okay. So those are the two main principles. The other thing that you need to do is not have enough of the food that produces sugar, which is the carbohydrates, so the levels don't shoot up too much. You give enough of a break in between the foods to let, sorry, I don't know whether I can now do the slides because that picture has gone. Okay. You give enough of the time between the meals for the sugar to start coming down and also for the insulin to start coming down. And thirdly, what you need to do is give the body a chance to get the blood sugar out from the blood. And one of the ways of doing that is to do exercise, so you use up the sugar straight after the meal. The second thing that you can actually end up doing is giving medicines which leak out sugar through the kidneys. And we've got a good medication group called the SGLT2s, which allows that to happen. If you have a combination of not having foods which produce the sugar, giving enough break in between the meals for the sugar to naturally start coming down and the insulin to start coming down, and you promote the blood sugar to come down by leaking out through the kidneys, you will end up normalizing the blood sugar a lot more easily and giving the body a chance for the pancreas to start recovering. And finally, the insulin itself to start becoming a lot more sensitive. Type 2 diabetes forms as a result of insulin resistance because the high levels of insulin and sugar in the bodies tends to dampen down the effect of the insulin and also dampens down the secretions of insulin by the pancreas. So basically giving the body a little bit of a break, a rest to start recovering. It's almost, the analogy I often give is, remember in the old days when you're driving from here to Birmingham or Manchester, the habit was always to stop the car, let it rest, the engine doesn't overheat. The same principle for actually letting the body recover. And if you do it with passion, with positivity, and the individuals practice that procedure day in, day out, I have found that people's insulin sensitivity improves immensely. They're able to get their blood sugar control completely normalized. And I've had people who have been depending on taking injections, let alone several medications, having recovery of their body and their insulin resistance to actually stop the insulin, as well as avoiding medications after a period. It's unfortunate I can't actually show you the slides because that itself would have been visually a lot more effective. But without the slides, I think it's difficult to demonstrate the improvement that you can have and what else you can do. But because the slides are not there, what I would suggest is I just list you the kind of things which in our culture, the Asian culture, we need to change. There are certain foods that you need to cut out or minimize. Flour-based foods, which is fundamental to our culture and our eating habits, things like chapatis, naans, bread, pita bread, pasta, pizzas, biscuits, crisps. These all push up the sugar immensely. We need to cut those down. Rice, potatoes, cereals, big culprit, and a lot of fruits which are very sweet and tasty. Fruit drinks, fresh fruit or the Tropicanas or the carton fruit juices, they're all culprits. I do introduce and advise people not to have vegetable oils for their cooking. It's important to go for natural, healthy fats. And in our culture, we're all used to using ghee. Ghee in moderation, small amounts, is actually a lot more healthier than the vegetable oils for our cooking. I always encourage people to have their meals and then go for a walk or do some sort of exercise. I always encourage people to have the lighter meals with no carbohydrates at nighttime. At least they eat and they can go to sleep. They don't have the big stodgy meals which pushes up the sugar overnight. I always encourage them to try to miss breakfast because that is the best way to have a long period of fasting. It's a lot easier to eat at about 6 o'clock at night time. Then at least you got a full stomach to be able to go to sleep and rest. But missing breakfast is the easiest meal to miss. And if you miss breakfast, just have water or fluids and then don't eat until about midday. You've ended up having 18 hours of fasting. That helps with reducing the insulin, the sugar, and sensitizing the insulin. So it works a lot more effectively. I encourage people to do the relaxation, the yoga, the breathing exercises on a regular basis because that helps to de-stress and relax the body, which also helps with the insulin production and controlling the blood sugar. And I also encourage them to sleep well. Always have their rest. Because if they don't, if they're tired all the time and stressed, their insulin resistance is high, the blood sugars remain high. Those are the kind of things that do actually work. And as I've said, I've got a lot of patients who within weeks have been able to give up medications and have actually stopped insulin production usage as well, injections. I think that's enough for us to just listen to me. I'm very happy to have a focus on specific questions because we've got limited time.
Thank you very much, Dr. Keza, and thank you for overcoming the technical difficulties. We were worried. We thought there was no internet in Slough, that it had missed Slough. It had gone from Leicester to Bristol without going through Slough. Thank you so much. Are there any questions that anyone has? Just blurt out. You don't have to put your hand up if you would like to ask a question. You're very comprehensive in all this, so I think you might not have a massive number of questions. But are there any questions that people might have?
So instead of chapatis, etc., what would you suggest to eat with our vegetables?
Yeah, I mean, that is always a very common question. The thing is, you can either use some of the other flours to make the chapatis or the equivalent. And almond flour and soya flour, and there's another flour called lupin bean flour that you can get from Amazon and Morrison's, and even fiber flour that you can get from Amazon. They've got a lot lower carbohydrate content, almost about a sixth of normal wheat. But the biggest problem is that making chapatis with those sort of flours is a lot more difficult, and you need to eat them rather fresh rather than being able to store them as we commonly do. If you're happy to give up chapatis, then you can try just salads. Small salad is very useful. People often in our culture use big pieces of salad. You know, the lettuce leaves on the side and the large slices of cucumber, etc. The easiest thing to do is chop it up, small pieces, and have them on a plate, and use them almost like rice on the bottom of a plate, and then you put your curries and your vegetables and your dals, whatever you're having on top. And it actually tastes very nice. People get worried that you're going to have a cold salad and then the hot curry on top. Try it. It is actually very, very nice. I have that every evening.
Thank you. Let's go to Kishan. Kishan has a question. Good evening, Kishan. You need to unmute and ask your question. Kishan, are you there? You've got your little yellow hand up. Kishan, are you with us?
Is it on mute?
Yeah. Okay. Please ask your question, Kishan. No, you don't have a question? Okay. But I think your yellow hand is up. You might have pressed it by mistake. Not to worry. Any more questions from anybody else?
Can I interrupt, please?
Yes, who's that?
Smita Pabari.
Yes, Smita, go ahead.
You know when you say miss breakfast, but you're supposed to be taking your tablets anyway, I found if I miss a lunch or something, I get a reaction on my tablet.
Absolutely. I think it depends a lot on the tablets that you're talking about here. Now, if we're checking on the diabetic medications, there is one rule. If you're looking at other medications, for example, blood pressure tablets, then there's a slightly different rule. If we're talking about blood pressure tablets, which is commonly used in diabetics, then you can have them on just with water on an empty stomach in the morning. If, however, you feel uncomfortable, you can have them a little bit later on, mid-morning or late morning. Regarding the diabetic medications, a lot of the medications tend to lower the sugar. So you don't want to take them on an empty stomach and then not eat anything for a few hours. So I always recommend that you delay those tablets up till lunchtime. For example, glycoside, it should be at lunchtime with the meals. Metformin should be with the meals, so you miss it out in the morning. Things like dapagliflozin or empagliflozin or the gliptins or even pioglitazone, you can take them in the morning, but it's sensible to have them at lunchtime when you have your first meal.
Okay, I'm on metformin slow release.
Yeah, the metformin slow release works well.
Mhm.
Ideally, it should be taken with the meals. So if you're missing breakfast, why take it? Take it at lunchtime.
I actually had it breakfast, but I missed my lunch and I had a reaction with it.
Okay. That's unusual with metformin itself.
Right.
Okay, let's go over to. Thanks. Let's go to Dinesh. Dinesh has a question. Dinesh.
Hello, Doctor. Yeah, can you please share the slides with silver star so I can request it later on by email?
Yeah.
Yes.
We will send you the slides after the meeting.
Yeah, thank you.
Are there any more questions? I think
Can I have a question with him, please?
Yes, who's that?
Chandrika?
Yes, Chandrika, go ahead.
It's a quick question regarding my rebel son. Can you
Regarding
hear
your what?
rebel son?
Riderson.
Yeah, RYBLSUS. It's a new one.
Rielson.
Yeah,
Is it a new drug?
RYBELSUS.
Riberson.
Yeah,
Riberson.
It's a new diabetic medicine.
Is there a new medicine called Riberson, Dr. Keza?
What that I've used,
Yeah, it's a semaglutide underneath it says. Semaglutide.
semaglutide, that is like one of the GLP-1 medications. It must be a new one that's going to be coming out. What do you need to know about that?
They have given it to me and it says 3 milligram and then increased to 7 milligram after 30 days.
Yes.
I'm struggling at the moment because they gave me steroid and my sugar's been going up.
Mhm.
What's the best thing to control the sugar at the moment? Because I'm trying my best, as in diet and everything. What's the side effects on this as well?
Yeah, that's a medicine that I haven't used on that name, but if it's like semaglutide, that is one of the GLP medicines, which I think you would have heard about in the news, very popular at the moment. The Ozempic, Viagra, it's for weight loss and it suppresses the appetite. Now, I think if you're got other complicated problems and you're on steroids, in order to advise you on what's the best way forward, you do need to have your full medical history and your results. It will be very difficult for me to be specific advice on what you should be doing. This particular medication has been popularized because they think it's the magic trick to losing weight and getting your diabetes under control, but it's like any medication, they do have side effects. And it's one of those medications which I personally would not be recommending unless I know the full details about the patient and assessment.
Yeah, they
Okay,
put me on
thank you
yeah.
very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
And if you have any further information, Dr. Sadra, about this particular new drug, if you could let us have it, we will circulate it to all members of the group. Dr. Keza Sadra, thank you so much for joining us. It's already 6:32, and we try to make sure that we finish by 6:45. Thank you for your presentation. And if you could send the slides to the Silver Star team, to Rajiv and others, they will make sure that they are circulated. So thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you.
Apologies for the technology.
It's always the technology. That's what they said when they got to Apollo 9 on the moon. It was always, the technology. Regards to Slough. Thank you very much. Thank you. Let's go straight over to West London. From Slough to Hounslow, Dr. Steffi is there with the news headlines. Good evening, Dr. Steffi. What are the top stories for today?
Hello, everybody, and hello, kids. So,
Hello.
today's news headlines. The first news: type of the mouth bacteria melts some cancer studies finds. Researchers at Guy's and St. Thomas and King's College London are surprised to find a type of bacteria commonly found in the mouth called Fusobacterium appears to have the ability to kill certain cancers. People with head and neck cancer who were found to have this bacterium within their cancer have been found to have much better outcomes according to a study. The second news: Mediterranean diet with extra olive oil slashes the risk of breast cancer by 2/3. A Mediterranean diet with added olive oil can reduce the risk of breast cancer in women by 2/3, a study has suggested. The study found that the women aged between 60 and 80 who followed the Mediterranean diet with added extra virgin olive oil had a 68% lower risk of malignant breast cancer than those following low-fat diet. The third news: 5 ways to stay safe in the heat. Stay cool indoors by closing curtains on rooms that face the sun, drinking plenty of fluids, and do not drink too much alcohol. Keep out of the sun between 11 a.m. and 3 p.m. when the sun rays are strongest. Avoid physical exercise in the hottest part of the day. Keep the shade. Use sunscreen with high SPF and UVA ratings, and wear a wide-brimmed hat. That's all for today's news, and good evening to everyone.
Thank you very much, Dr. Steffi. Thank you for that presentation. We are probably going to take a break with Silver Star over the August period, but we will let you know when that's
Okay.
going to be. In the meantime, my thanks to Dr. Kesa Sadra, to obviously Dr. Steffi, to Rajiv and others in the team. Thank you for joining us. It's very hot. We're all in short sleeve, I can see, except for Dr. Sadra and myself. So you got a chance to be going out into the garden and enjoying yourself today. Thank you for joining the Diabetes Chai Chat. We will see you all again soon. Good evening.
Thank you. Good evening.